Hello and welcome everyone. I am Professor Nikki Eshtiaqi from RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. And as always, it is a real pleasure to have you with us. You are watching Innovaticals, and if you haven't already, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and join our vibrant community of students, researchers, and professionals who are passionate about learning, growing, and supporting each other. Here at Innovatical, we are all about the sharing real experiences, practical wisdom, and evidence-based strategy to help you thrive both in your career and in your life. In our last episode, we started an important conversation about the independence, one of the key elements of the emotional intelligence. We talk about what it means to be self-directed, emotionally grounded, and responsible for your own decision. We also shared the contrasting journey of two students, Sally, who stepped into the independence with confidence and planning, and Samantha, who has struggled with the over-reliance on others. Today, we are going to take the conversation a step further. In this episode, we will explore real lived experience of the student who have navigated different challenges and turning point in their journey toward independence. This story will help us unpack the emotional and psychological dimension of what it means to be independent, not just in a study or work, but in life. We will also take a closer look at someone's underlying belief, habits, and fears that can either support or hold us back from becoming truly self-reliant. Let us start with Amy's story. Amy was a top student. She worked hard, got high marks in every subject, and finished her science degree with a great result. Her teachers often said she was smart and reliable. But her friend noticed something else. Amy didn't like making decisions on her own. She often asked others for advice even when she already knew the answer. After university, Amy got a job as a research assistant in a biotech company. It was a good first job and she hoped it would help her prepare for future study. Amy learned the lab work very quickly. In just a few weeks, she was doing the task that usually took new employees months to learn. But there was a problem. Even when Amy knew exactly what to do, she didn't feel confident. She asked her co-workers or her supervisor to check every small decision. For example, even when she followed the rules correctly, she still asked someone else before finishing a task. At first, her team was happy to help, but after a while they felt frustrated. They thought Amy didn't trust them or that she was too afraid to do things on her own. Her checking and asking slowed down the whole team. People become less willing to help, and Amy started to feel isolated. When her supervisor gave her feedback, Amy became defensive. She told others that the job was too easy for her and reminded them she had plans to go to graduate school. But the truth was, Amy's problem wasn't about how smart she was. It was about independence. Amy didn't trust herself. She was afraid of making mistakes or being blamed. So instead of making her own choices, she always looked for approval. This stopped her from growing and made it harder for her to work well with others. So, what we learn from this story, Amy's story shows us something important. Being independent is not just useful at home or in the school. It is also important at work. Employers need people who can make a decision, take an action, and solve the problem without always needing help. This is what emotional independence looks like. Let's look at a second story. This is a story of Fiona, a 22-year-old master student studying international relations. When Fiona learned about a student conference in Rome on global leadership, she saw it as a dream opportunity. The event wasn't directly related to her research, but like many students, she was eager to attend for experience, the connection, and a chance to see Rome. However, she had already used all her university funding for the semester. When she asked, the department explained they couldn't cover the cost, especially since the conference wasn't central to her academic work. Fiona then turned to her parents for help, but they reminded her they were already supporting her education and couldn't afford to pay for the trip. Still determined, Fiona applied for a microloan to cover her travel and registration fee, believing it would be worth it. At first, Rome was everything she had imagined. Vibrant, historic, full of life. But the expenses added up quickly. Meals, local travel, and unexpected costs drained her fund faster than she expected. Not wanting to miss out or appear struggling, she spent beyond her budget and ended up borrowing from classmates back home. By the end of the week, Fiona was sick, isolated in her hostel room and overwhelmed. She had little money left, missed the final days of the conference, and returned to university exhausted and in debt. Fiona's story shows us that independence is not just about making your own choices. It is also about being ready to handle the consequences. There are many kinds of independence: financial, emotional, academic, and it's normal to be stronger in some area than others. What matters is recognizing where we still rely on others and taking a small step to grow in those areas so next time we are more prepared. One thing important I wanted to emphasize here. Independence is also closely connected to self-regard, which means how we feel about ourselves. When you feel good about who you are more likely to trust yourself and do things on your own. And when you show that kind of confidence, other people notice and respect you more. Making decisions, acting on them, and dealing with the result, these are important life skills. The more we practice, the better we get. And the better we get, the more confident we feel. Let's look at a story about Tim and what we can learn from his experience. Tim was a 21-year-old university student studying media and communications. He was friendly and polite, and he was tried to be kind to everyone. But like many students, Tim didn't feel very confident. He often waited for others to make plans and didn't like doing things on his own. Tim knew a lot of people on campus, but he didn't have any close friends. He often felt left out, especially on weekends. If no one invited him to hang out, he would just stay in his room watching videos or scrolling through his phone. He didn't want to be alone, but he also didn't feel brave enough to take the first step. Even he had the ideas like going to movies, trying a new cafe, or joining a club. He stayed quiet, hoping someone else would ask him. But when no one did, he stayed home. One Friday night, after another quiet weekend started, Tim felt frustrated. He called his older brother, who had already finished university. His brother listened and said something simple. Why not just to go out and do something you enjoy, even if it is by yourself? You might actually like it. Tim wasn't sure at first, but the next day he gave it a try. He walked to a local bookstore he had always wanted to visit. Then he got a coffee and sat outside reading. It was quite peaceful and surprisingly nice. He felt relaxed. He didn't have to follow anyone else's plan. He could just enjoy the moment. After that, Tim started doing more things on his own. He joined a student film club, went to the campus art show, and even tried out the gym alone. Slowly, he started feeling better about himself. He trusted himself more, and something interesting happened. People began to notice. His classmates asked, "Hey Tim, what did you do last weekend?" Or, "That sounds cool. Can I join you next time?" Was no longer waiting to be invited. He started making the plan and others wanted to come along. Tim's story shows us that the independence builds confidence, and confidence helps us connect better with others. He didn't have to do something big. He started with one small step, and that step helped him to grow. But remember again, real independence doesn't mean doing everything alone or refusing help. That's not healthy either. True independence is about the balance. It's about trusting yourself and knowing when to ask for support. You listen to advice, you think for yourself, and then you make your own smart decision. That's how confidence grows. And that's what real independence looks like. Let's now look at a George story and what we can learn from it. George was a third-year business student who worked on the university student-run business club. For 2 years, he helped manage events, solve small problems, and support other students. He was well organized and always seemed to get things done on time. Many people saw George was very independent, but part of the George's success came from working closely with his team leader, Tom. Tom had been running the club for a few years and had a clear system for how things should be done. George learned that the system and followed it closely. When problems came up, he would ask Tom for advice and then follow the step Tom suggested. Over the time, George became good at doing things the Tom way. In his final year, Tom graduated and George was chosen to take over as the new club leader. Everyone saw that would be great in the role, but as soon as George took over, things started to change. He suddenly had to make his own decision without Tom's help. When things went wrong or didn't follow the usual routine, George didn't know what to do. He asked others for ideas, but it became clear that he wasn't really looking for suggestions. He wanted someone else to decide for him. Even though George had taken a workshop on leadership and problem solving, he still struggled. He couldn't choose what to focus on first. He kept delaying decisions. His team grew confused and frustrated. George became anxious and unsure of himself. After a few months, he stepped down from his role. And so what happened? George seemed independent on the outside, but in truth, he had only learned how to copy someone else's way of doing things. He had memorized Tom's steps without really understanding the why behind them. When it came time to lead in his own way, he didn't feel confident. He didn't trust himself to handle new problem or take a risk. Before we move on, there is one more important point to keep in mind. Research with college students has shown something interestingly. High independence on its own doesn't always lead to success. Some students who were very independent actually struggled because they didn't ask for help when they needed. They tried to handle everything alone, didn't use campus resources, and avoided reaching out for support. So here it is the key. Real independence is not about doing everything by yourself. It's about knowing when to work on your own and also knowing when it is smart to ask for help. The ability to be independent is a powerful skill. It means being able to follow your own path, set your own goals, and make decisions with confidence. But if you are afraid to ask questions or too focused on doing it all alone, you might hold yourself back. At the end of the day, people who are truly independent don't need constant approval, but they are also not afraid to learn from others. They know who they are, they know what they want, and they have the courage to go after it step by step. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it helpful. If you did, please consider sharing with your friends, classmates, and colleagues, or anyone else who might benefit from it. Remember, here at Innovaticals, we are building a supportive community where we help each other grow, learn, and succeed, whether it is in a study, research, or career, because when we support each other, we do not just grow individually, we thrive together. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep growing.